Now, I'm interested, in short, in the kinds of things that happen between people that produce trouble. What are the things you do? What are the things I do, which tend to promote friction, tension, conflict, confusion, misunderstanding between us? And these are some of the things that I should like to explore. Now, let me begin, if I may, by exploring them from a slightly different point of view. If I can give you some indication of the magnitude of one kind of problem in a slightly larger context. In the 1941, Sir Norman Angell, the great British economist and educator, wrote an essay called Education in the Present Crisis. And I'd like to read 2 paragraphs which will put my interest in a very larger context. I'm reading from what he says. If the world has nearly destroyed itself, it is not from lack of knowledge in the sense that we lack the knowledge to cure cancer, but it is due to the fact that the mass of men have not applied to public policy knowledge which they already possess, which is indeed of almost universal possession, deducible from the facts of everyday life. He goes on. If this is true, then no education which consists mainly in the dissemination of knowledge can save us. If men can disregard in their policies the facts they already know, they can just as easily disregard new facts which they do not at present know. What is needed is this: the development in men of that particular type of skill which will enable them to make social use of knowledge already in their possession, enable them to apply simple, sometimes self-evident truths to the guidance of their common life. Now may I put what Sir Norman is saying in my own words. Certainly in the last 100 years, it's a truism to say that the boundaries of what we know keep getting pushed further and further back. We know more and more about more and more. Take 100 people in business or professional activities, and they will be far more specialized. They will know more and more about a greater number of things in comparison with their predecessor 50 to 75 years ago. That is, the range of what we know keeps getting pushed further and further. Now, I know very few people who would say, we know enough, let's quit. Let's stop the advancing front of time. Let's quit the research we're doing. Let's rest on our laurels. I know very few. Think, for example, what we wouldn't give to know what causes those cells to proliferate into cancer. Think what we wouldn't give at this moment to know why the boy down the street gets polio and the girl neighbor next door doesn't, and why one is desperately injured and the other isn't. We'd give a great deal, and there are, as a matter of fact, I know of no area where people have already said, let's rest content. We know enough. Let's proceed to stop. But about 30-odd years ago, a man by the name of Alfred Korzybski, Korzybski, whose name isn't too well known, a man who has had very little academic recognition, who has had very little to do with any of our existing universities, colleges, and so on. But he had a slightly different but interesting idea. This is what he thought. What is there, he said, in the far reaches of a university library? What is there that our professors of anthropology and zoology can agree on? What is there in this vast, tremendous intellectual creation that we've produced? What is there that we all know together? Are there any ideas, simple, complicated, that everybody can agree on? And then he asked another question. If we could find those ideas, he said, is it possible that the neglect of this common wisdom, is it possible that this distillate from all the areas that we know, when neglected, leads to trouble? That is to say, if you and I can agree, no matter how specialized you are or how specialized I am, on what we know in common, then is it possible that if I don't pay attention to that common wisdom, if I lose it, that maybe that's the place to look for the source of tension and conflict and confusion in our everyday talking. And then Korzybski asked a simpler question. It was this: can we find this common wisdom, this common distillate, and when we do, is it at all possible that we can put it in words of one syllable so we can teach it to our children, or we can teach it in the grave? And whether or not he succeeded in this great mission of his, of finding what we all ought to know together, and whether or not that is responsible, the neglect is responsible for the tension, is a matter that I shall be trying to tell you about in these sessions. And whether or not I can say it in words that are simple enough so that we can teach these great big ideas to our youngsters is also something that I think you'll be able to test better than I.